I think you can send me a question. Yeah, I can see it. Awesome. That's Caitlin. Thank you, Caitlin. I hope you're doing great. I'm trying to do great too. Who's ready to learn some about assessments? I know. I mean, I always imagine that I'm going to hear you guys responding, but no. This is only everybody's muted, of course, to prevent unrequired noises. This doesn't mean that you can't participate, and you will participate because I do have questions for you. And you might have some questions for me too, in which case you can deposit those in the questions section in your GoToWebinar. Let me, before I continue, yes, I'm recording. I wanted to make sure I was recording. Yes, actually, I have a question. Yes, I agree on Thursdays. And actually, usually our webinars are Thursday. This is not the webinar. The webinar, as you know, happens on the last Thursday of every month, which is going to be next week. This today is not the HMIS webinar. This is actually a training. We're going to hear, as you can see on our agenda, we're going to be talking today about assessments. This is not, and I repeat, this is not the actual webinar that we normally have at the end of the month. So yes, you're correct, Mike. We voted on Thursdays. This is not one of those webinars. Again, you might have some questions for me. You know that you can use the questions section. I can see because I am already reading some of you guys questions in there. Pretty straightforward agenda. This training is going to be divided in two sections. The first section, you will hear me talking about assessments, and then you will see me in action working what we cover in the first part. Again, as you can see there. Oh, and also our data coordinator, Kristen Sakur, will join us in a few to give us some really interesting feedback on reports. Because as you know, assessments and reports are connected. I'll try to make this as simple and direct as possible. And I'll try. Try is the key word here. But you can always keep me grounded. If I'm talking and something doesn't make sense, please ask the question. Now, bear in mind that right now I'm manning this on my own. I don't have my amazing team with me today. They're on vacation. That's good. They need to rest as well. But so if I take time responding to questions, is for that reason. I have to go back and forth and checking all of that situations. But first, actually, before we jump in full gear, for those of you that have attended our webinars, you know that I love polls. That's the best way to entice participation. And actually, I learn a lot from your answers. So I do have a question for you before we start. Let's launch this in a minute. Find me the polls. I have the polls. All right, ready? This is the first question for you, and here it goes. Why assessments are important? Your answers here will determine if we should be even having this training in the first place. I'm just kidding. I need to know. I need to know this. I mean, just to know that we're in the same page. And as you read the choices, you know where this is going. I have mostly, yes, I have all of you guys participated. That's great. I'm going to close this poll. Let me share you the results over here. 96% of you got it right. This 4%, we'll work on that. Don't worry about it. Let's hide these results. As you know, assessments are important. for these and many reasons more. If we go back to the beginning, to the source, to that time when your agency signed the application to start using HMIS, I mean, it all started there. Now, I know that a lot of you didn't sign that application. So most of you didn't actually read some of those details, but we have been talking about this. We discussed these issues during the entry training, the first training that you have before you go into HMIS. But if you didn't see that intake application, you probably missed something along these lines. To end homelessness, communities have to understand the scope of the problem by identifying characteristics of homeless individuals and families and figuring out what works in their communities. This is standard talk. This is the goal. We're talking here about the goal. We want to end homelessness. I want to do this. You want to do this. Well, that's why we're working where we are. But to do it, to be able to fully end homelessness, what do we need first? I always ask this question. I mean, and I know that it's almost too easy. I mean, I'm embarrassed to ask it. I mean, like, what's the first step to solve a problem? And I'm embarrassed because you know this, because we have to accept that there is one problem, right? And in our line of work, how do we recognize this issue? In the streets. Well, okay, in the streets. We see people on the streets. That's a symptom, right? But seeing people in the street doesn't really address the issue, does it? We need something a bit more substantial. And here is where we come in. And you're going to hear a lot, like you have heard a lot in the past, that when I talk about us, let's say we a lot, you and us, that includes us. Data is becoming increasingly important in pinpointing the major characteristics of homelessness. And if used correctly, it can lead communities towards workable solutions. Now, we are confident that accurate, solid data provides an opportunity to work towards that goal, the goal of ending homelessness. And on the way there, it also measures outputs, outcomes, and the impact you and your agency are having in the community. So you see all of those options that we discussed in the first poll. Everything is connected. And you might ask, hey, okay, Jesus, I understand. I already went to training. Why are we having this webinar now? That's a really good question. Let me actually ask you another question first. Why are we having this training now? Let me put it on you now. Here are some of your options. Why are we having this webinar now? A refresher is never out of style because things have changed throughout the years. We have to make sure that we are on the same page, or all of the above. Okay, let's close this poll. See where we are? All of the above. That's the correct answer. All of the above. Don't feel bad, those of you that responding to refresher is never out of style. I truly believe in that statement, except for this case, everything is part of why we're having this this webinar. Yes, a refresher is never out of style, but things have changed throughout the years. In previous polls that we had during our previous webinars, we learned that some of you were trained when you started, and that could have been 3-4 years ago. Some of you were trained by other team members that are no longer here with us. And through all that time, we have had some changes, and that's the reason why sometimes when we ask for a specific change, for a specific assessment, I mean, we hear the question, Is this something new? And that always like keeps me a little jolt of panic. So I'm like, no, 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 this hasn't been new. Assessments are never are not a new thing. We have been doing this for a while. However, I insist that that's why we're here right now. We're going to be talking what has changed, and you can tell us, hey, I already know all this. Let's see if that's true. Believe it or not, the main purpose of this training is just to simplify your life. And I know that social work is hard. That's the reason why your data entry shouldn't be. Yes, we cover this during trainings. We go over and stress the importance of conducting assessments. The importance of assessments. During trainings, however, everything is new. And your focus, your primary focus always, and I know this, I mean, I'm talking obviously here about myself, right? When you're training the first time, this is your first job or you go into an orientation, usually your primary focus becomes the how, not necessarily the why. Like you learn and you want to know, how do I log in? How do I navigate the system? How do I find my client? How do I conduct an intake? So you master the how. That's great. That's very, very important. But without the why, we can't fully grasp its usefulness. And you can say, yeah, Jesus, but you said this was about simplifying my life. But so far, I've heard nothing about it. Okay, I accept simplifying your life. It's a bit of a stretch, but we can start by simplifying your work life. And nothing helps you do this more than putting your whole effort into the little things that make the bigger things work. You have, and this is like, I wanted to say this. You have no idea, for example, how much I work in creating this presentation, right? So I put a lot of effort. I mean, perhaps even more than needed. I put always a lot of effort in the design. It's little things, right? Those are the little things. But why? Why do I do this? What is if it's so little? Well, okay. And this is how I work. Having a good presentation, it motivates me because now I feel that I need to live up to that standard. I think that I mean, that's another thing. I think that you will appreciate having some eye candy. Again, those are little things, but those are the little things that make other bigger things work. Let's go back to assessments. If you conduct the assessments correctly, you don't have to stress out when your deadline approaches. And we all have deadlines. It sounds awesome, no? Like having a deadline approaching and you don't have to worry. Imagine being a week away from that deadline your boss or your funder gave you, and you don't have to worry. Okay, let's continue on this scenario. Imagine you are going to you need to report. You go into your report section. You select your reporting criteria, select your dates, your program, and simply click Run. Imagine seeing that report and it's flawless. All your clients are there, all your data is there. You can see the progress. Your program is working. Now wake up, because that dream is only achievable if you do the data entry right. Sorry, I didn't mean to burst the bubble, but that's what we're here for. So before I pass this to Kristen, because I need to pause for a minute. And again, I want to stress this again. You know how I always say that we are a team, and that my team, the HMIS team, is your team. Mi equipo es tu equipo. I believe in those words, and I hope you do too. But sometimes I feel like we have fallen into some sort of a vicious circle. And allow me to explain. You have noticed that we, the HMIS department, send emails to you with a very short deadline. Those emails are the hardest to send. I don't like them at all. And I'm being honest here, especially when a lot of these issues are situations that can be easily corrected. How, you ask, how we can be easily corrected? Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons why we send, for example, universal data quality reports. Those are situations that can be easily corrected. It's very easy to make a mistake. I make mistakes a lot. It's very easy. We're all human. We're gonna make mistakes. But if you know you have a deadline, I mean, those deadlines usually are standard. They're there. You don't find out usually uh, a week before. You know in advance when it's coming. Um, so that's one of the reasons I don't like sending these emails like, "Hey guys, we need you to do this today or tomorrow." It's too much. Um, the same way that I don't like to receive those emails that sometimes I receive when some of you have a deadline tomorrow or the same day, right? You may say, well, that makes us even. But that's not the point. I'll stop when you stop. No. Okay. To stop all these emails whatsoever, those short deadlines, there is one thing that we can do. And you know what it is, right? No, I don't have a poll for that. Uh, I just want to ask you, do not fear the data. The data is your friend. And here to talk about a recent scenario we had regarding data, one of our recent reports, I guess some of you received some emails, I think it was a month ago. But a little to explain a little more for that, I want to welcome our own data coordinator, Kristen Sakur. She's going to talk to us about system performance measures, and then we'll go back to this training.
Thank you, Jesus. Can everybody hear me okay? Jesus, can you hear
Yes.
me okay? All right, great. Okay, awesome. So yes, like Jesus said, data is your friend. Yay for data. I have the pleasure of working with it every day. I'm sure some of you don't appreciate when you have to work with it, but let me just tell you, like Jesus said, this information is so important to help us, solve a lot of our issues in our communities and can really just help to propel forward best practices. So today I'm just going to take up a little bit of time and talk about system performance measures and assessments. I know Jesus is going to dive deeper into the importance of assessments. So like I said, I'm not going to take up too much of your time, but I do kind of want to focus on the most recent report that we submitted to HUD, which is the system performance measures. Just really quickly, for those of you who don't know, what are system performance measures? They are system-level data that allow HUD to understand how a COC's entire homelessness system is performing. And they're based on the HMIS data. Once again, why is this data so important? Because a lot of our reports that we deal with, are all the data is being pulled from HMIS. And once again, just talking specifically about system performance measures, this information is considered on the COC application, which is essentially why I'm here today to stress the importance of entering and maintaining that high quality data in our system. So just really quickly, I kind of want to talk about some of the concerns that we had after looking at the data in our system and some of the obstacles we faced with this year's system performance measure submission. So one of the overall patterns that we saw within our system is people not actually completing those assessments. And this goes for all the assessments that can be entered into HMIS for your client. But specifically, I want to focus on the annual assessment, which is the assessment that really kind of dinged us from people not completing that assessment for their clients. It dinged us on these numbers that we sent to HUD. And, you know, just piggybacking off of Jesus, as a general rule, it's important that we're all updating that client information whenever necessary. And I know he's going to help you guys better understand how to do that information, but please, if at any time you have questions about how to do this, let the HMIS support staff know, or let myself know, and we'll make sure that we're there to help support you guys in any way, because there's nothing more important to us, and especially to me as a data coordinator, than getting really high quality data into our system at all times. And, you know, and just obviously if we're doing this on a regular basis throughout the year, it helps to improve our overall data quality of the system and allows for a more accurate picture of what's happening within our system at any given time. So honestly, it helps everybody out, not only us on our end, but also on your end as well. If you just need to kind of get a snapshot of what's going on in your community, if you have that accurate and high quality data, then you're going to be able to pull a report and get a true picture of what's happening. So this slide that we have up right now, on the left-hand side, we're actually going to be looking at just measure 4, and this is a financial measure that was most greatly affected by our annual assessments. So like I mentioned before, we had a lack of annual assessments when we pulled these numbers from our system, and they affected our percentages. So we're going to be looking at this left side first, and just where the red circles are, you can see those percentages. So these are the numbers that we actually ended up submitting to HUD. And keep in mind, we submitted these numbers to HUD with some of these annual assessments still not being completed. So meaning that some of the agencies still hadn't done that annual assessment for their clients. So that was submitted, you know, at the beginning of the month. We had these percentages, all good and well. But then we were just really trying to push our agencies to, you know, try to get in touch with those clients and complete those annual assessments if at all possible. And so many of you all were able to get in touch with some of those clients and complete the assessment. And as we can see on the right-hand side, those green circles, our percentages went up. So we went, you know, looking at 4.1, we went from 9% to 10%, 4.2, 24 to 27%, 4.3, 31 to 35%. Now, these particular measures, 4.1 to 4.3, are dealing with the stairs. So obviously, it was, you know, easier for a lot of you to get in touch with those clients since they were most likely around. But as you can see, you know, our numbers went up in a positive direction. And you may say to yourself, oh, well, that's just, you know, a few percentage, you know, difference. Well, that is a huge difference for us. And, you know, may seem like a small change, but it is very significant. And if you think about it, we want to make sure that we're submitting the highest quality data to HUD. So the better numbers that we can give to them, the, you know, obviously the more benefit it's going to have for all of us when it comes to competition time. So on the left side, this is what HUD got. And on the right side, this is really what they should have received, those higher percentage numbers. So just keeping in mind, if we are keeping all those assessments up to date, they are being completed with our clients, we can achieve higher outcomes. And once again, you know, those are just only going to benefit us in the end. So can't stress enough how important it is to try to, you know, enter this data in, you know, in a timely manner, and also just making sure that it is high quality data that we are entering into our system. The next slide, it's just the continuation of this particular measure 4, but this was just focusing on leavers. So since leavers are probably harder to get in touch with, we didn't see much difference from what we submitted into, you know, the most recent report that we pulled, and that's okay. You know, these leavers probably are gone, and we have no way of accessing them again. So that first slide is really where we're seeing that impact as to how important and or just imperative, you know, getting that annual assessment completed is, and how it just is going to be so beneficial for us in the end. So this is just a small example of how data can affect things, you know, on a larger scale. I know that everybody has tons of things to enter into HMIS, and I know sometimes it's a daunting task, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands, the importance of it, and it just to understand how much it benefits us all as a COC at large, and your programs too, specifically. If at any point in time you have questions about this stuff, I'm more than happy. This is what I deal with every single day. So I love talking numbers. So if at any point I can be of assistance when it comes to reporting or just data stuff, I'm more than happy to help. But like I said, my whole portion of this webinar was just to kind of give you guys that visual of what was and what could have been. And so moving forward, hopefully we can make sure that we are, giving HUD, the ones who give us the money, the best numbers possible from our system. So if anybody has a question, you know where to find me, Kristen@thn.org. And I'm more than happy to help in any way possible. So thank you for giving me a few minutes, Jesus.
No, thank you, Kristen. And actually, I wanted to apologize because in the slide I incorrectly wrote your last name. So I obviously my dyslexia at work. You guys can
Oh,
see it in
no
there.
worries. It's okay. I didn't even notice it until you pointed it out.
I inverted obviously the last. Yeah. Okay. So
I'm used to people mispronouncing my name, and you said it perfectly. So thank you.
okay. Thank you very much, Kristen.
Thank you,
We're
everyone.
ready to move forward. And yeah, like she said, I mean, we have a very, very dedicated team here at THN, and we're more than glad to help you. If you're having issues, if something is not clear, don't hesitate to give us a call. Don't hesitate to email us. I mean, if we don't have the answer, we will look for that answer. I mean, I know I have seen everybody in the agency work really, really hard, making sure that we can address as many questions as possible. And because that's the only way that we can advance, by having all the information. And with that in mind, let's move forward to with this presentation. You guys know the assessment types. We cover them during the training, but let's just for the sake of this presentation, let me see. I don't have a poll for this actually. I should have, but no, I don't. So I'm just going to tell you here that we have the entry assessment. No, I mean pretty self-explanatory, and don't worry, I'm going to explain them. We have the exit assessment. We have the during program enrollment, and we have finally the annual assessment. Um, all of them are very important. All of them are different, and all of them are conducted by you or somebody in your staff. So, what better time than now to actually address what each of them are and do? All right, we'll start with the entry assessment. This is the first assessment you do when your client enrolls to your program. That first time when you go and you click intake and you launch the workflow, that first assessment is and must reflect the client's circumstances on that date that you enter your client. So this pretty much is a snapshot of the client's life when you first meet with them and when they go into your program. Here's the thing. If you're doing back data entry, and I don't know why you're doing back data entry, you still have to put the data that corresponds with the entry date. In here, in this entry assessment, is when we get demographics. Why do we get demographics? Well, I mean, it helps us. It helps us to know who is getting served. How many women? How many men? How many kids? How many Hispanics? How many not Hispanics? It's all of that information. It helps us to create a better picture to know who is needing or who is receiving the assistance. You gather also a current living situation, which is paramount to determine chronic homelessness. You get income and other sources, which gives you a hint of the type of help your clients might need. So you get all of this information, and this is your first assessment. If you don't capture demographics, we can't tell accurately who is being served. And I'm not here talking even about name or social. I mean, those are important as well. Why? Well, because without them, we can duplicate. I mean, there's a lot of people that have very similar names, and the social, the date of birth, those elements helps us to deduplicate, to create, to know if we're having to merge clients, because there's more than two in there. So that's why it's important. Again, if the client doesn't provide you the information, I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. But like, at least, for example, for a social, I will always say, like, can you at least get the last four digits if they have a social? I mean, just the last four digits. And again, sometimes it helps if you actually provide more information. You say, you know what, I mean, like, we just want to make sure that you're not there repeated. And like, the option, or the main purpose of us having this list is that we have to have an accurate, unduplicated list of clients served. And again, those details helps us. Those little details help the bigger things move around. Now, and again, I can't stress this enough. If a client refuses to share, that decision doesn't compromise the services. That client will be served. However, when you are federally funded, or just funded, I mean, and I know that I hear this a lot. Well, Jesus, I mean, our agency really doesn't receive any funding. Is okay, but let's pause there for a minute. Every agency is funded, otherwise you can't operate. Those funds may come from different sources, but regardless, your agency needs to know who is being served, where is that money going, who is being helped. I'm sure that your accounting department wants to know that too. So by enrolling your client, conducting the assessment, collecting the data, you're doing just that. Now, you can edit this entry assessment. So, okay, let me pause in here for a minute. If this client, for example, that you just you entered this client a week ago, and later that client provides you, a week later, the client provides you a social. He brings a social, and now you have a social, or the right amount of income. You ask for some pay stubs. The client wasn't really sure of how much income he or she was receiving. Um, you can edit this information if that information corresponds to sorry, if that information truly represents the characteristics of your client at entry. So in those cases, yes, you can go ahead and edit that entry assessment. Now, one rule of thumb, and you can always go and check your assessments. In a minute, I will show you where, if you have no clue of where that happens. But your client should only have one entry assessment per enrollment. So you can check your assessments, and if you see more than one entry assessments, that needs to be fixed, or it will affect your reports. Now, you may go, and again, I show you this in a little bit when we go into client track. You may see a client that has multiple entry assessments, and that is possible as well. If the client has been in other agencies, well, for every agency that the client goes, he will have an entry assessment. So yes, it is possible for a client to have multiple entry assessments. But for your agency, for the time that you're serving them right now, there has to be only one entry assessment. Let me see if there's any questions regarding right now entry assessments. No questions. Great. Let's continue. Number two, número dos, the exit assessment. Now, the client may stay in there as long as your program allows, or as long as the client participates. The client may be gone in one day or stay there for a year. No matter the time, whenever the client stops participating, the client stops coming back to sleep to your shelter, or moves out to a different housing situation, there's multiple options in here, multiple scenarios that can happen. But again, if the client stops participating, you no longer see the client. You have to close that enrollment. And when you do that, when you close the enrollment, you have to conduct an exit assessment. Like the exit assess, like the entry, sorry, like the entry assessment. The exit assessment, your client should only have one exit assessment per enrollment. And the data should reflect the circumstances of the client's life at exit. You may be asking, again, I don't know, I'm psychic. Why is this important? Why is this important, Jesus? Why do you want me to exit the client? Why do you want me? Why can the client stay there? Well, for once, your exit assessment tells us, and again, I'm not saying tells us as in tells me. I'm saying tells us as in us, you and us. It tells. Remember, we're a team. It tells us the destination. To know if your program is truly effective, you need to pay attention to those exits. Again, if we go back to that slide where it actually tells us what is our goal. Well, our goal is to make a difference, right? Our goal is to make sure the clients progress. Some programs like to provide fish, other programs would rather teach you how to fish. But regardless of the approach, you want to take as many people off the streets as you can, right? And the exit assessment captures that destination, whether the client goes and finally finds permanent housing, or where the client goes and remain housed, if that was a homeless prevention, for example. We hope to have as many good exits as we can. Again, I understand we can't house them all, but that's not going to stop us from trying. And we must truly make them count. Now, if you have an emergency shelter, you might want to bring those clients into rapid rehousing or transitional. If you have a transitional housing, you might want to exit your clients into permanent supportive housing. If you have a homelessness prevention program, you might want to keep those clients housed. Ultimately, it's the client's decision, right? And a combination of factors that determine where the client will go. We understand this. Different options, different characteristics. But no matter those characteristics, no matter the characteristics of your program, you want to better the life circumstances of your client. And when you do that, you conduct that exit assessment. You make sure you provide a destination. I mean, again, the client could have gone to live with family. That's a good exit too. I mean, like as long as the client doesn't return to the streets, right? And again, I mean, I go back to this and I stress this because I'm not asking you to do something that is not happening. I'm just asking you to like try to find the better outcome. But again, I'm not here to teach about case management. That's not my place. My place is just to tell you what can make your program look better. And that's what we're doing right now. When you conduct that exit assessment, you can feel proud because you are helping, and it actually shows. You can show your agency's progress because we know that in the amount of good exits that we have. Kristen, when she showed us that measure four is about income. There's other measures that asks us about how many clients, for example, return to the streets, how many clients that were enrolled into a permanent situation later fall in the streets again. Those numbers, we need to lower them. And the only way we can do this is by conducting these exit interviews and making sure that our clients are not just there landing and returning. I mean, we need to know if we can do something to help. Well, let's do that. And if we do, let's track it so we can show every aspect of our operation is working. And I know this is extremely difficult, especially in emergency shelter situations, because the client just stopped coming. And again, we can't do it all, but for the ones that we can, we will make them count. If the client stopped coming after 90 days, For emergency shelter situations, the client, or not, sorry, not the client, the system exits them automatically. But what happens is that if you wait for those clients to just disappear from the system, yeah, after 90 days, the enrollment will be closed, but there will be no exit assessment because there was no exit interview conducted. So there is no data. Sometimes they return, and this could be a good time to talk to them about where they go when they don't come to you. That can come actually handy in an exit situation. I mean, you guys probably are sick and tired of me talking about how I used to be a case manager. I actually miss it sometimes. But yes, I mean, you want to create that rapport, right? If you don't create a rapport with your clients, it's really, really difficult for the clients to open. So in this case, and again, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what I will do in a situation like this. And then you can tell me that doesn't work, Jesus. But okay, this is what I'll do. Hey, if this is not working for you, where are you going? Just start the conversation. What's your plan? Are you staying with family or friends? Will you let me know if you are not planning on returning? I don't know. I'm just throwing examples here. I'm sure that you have better approaches. You have been doing this for longer than I now. But the bottom line is, the more accurate our data is, the more effective we can be. If we improve our data quality, the chances to get funded again increases, because it shows the effort you're making here. Not only do we have reliable data to ask for more help, but we have a better grip on homelessness, what causes it, and how to prevent it in the first place. Um, I'm going to give you further scenarios moving forward. And again, I mean, we're going to go and have a demonstration in there too. So if you have questions as we go, you can write them in there. But I don't see any questions so far. So I'm going to think that I'm doing well. Okay, hold on 1 second. I have a question over here. So for any enrollment, is the question, no matter what type of program, the enrollment will be closed if there is no entry after 90 days. It's a good question, but the answer is no, not for every type of program. This only works for emergency shelters. And again, because we know the characteristics of that program, and it's kind of like a safeguard, if you want to call it like that, that emergency shelters programs have. If a client doesn't have any services in 90 days, that client will exit. Not after those 90 days. The assessment will return and will be closed on the date of the last time that client received a service. But again, this is only for emergency shelters. For other kinds of programs, I don't know, like rapid rehousing, homelessness prevention, we expect you to exit those clients when they're finally housed, or when they're have been already helped and there's no more participation. You can close those clients, and hopefully when you do that exit interview, you will make sure that you put in there whether the clients obtain housing or they move to a better situation. But no, not for every program type, just for emergency shelters. Very good question. Let's move forward here, because we still have some training to do. During program enrollment, this we call it the DPE, or the during program enrollment, but it's also known as the update. The update. Sorry, I don't want to show you that yet. Let's go back there. The update. You do one of these when the situation changes for your client. Okay. Now, remember I talked to you about editing. This is different than editing. Okay. This is obviously if the information changes after the client has been enrolled in your project. So if a client gets employed while being in your program, you update the income, right? If he or she gets a raise while in your program, you update the income. If the client receives benefits, you update the other sources for him. If the client obtains health insurance, if the client, and hopefully this doesn't happen often, changes his or her status regarding a physical disability or any of the barriers, HIV/AIDS, substance abuse, updates. The domestic violence situation changes, updates. This can also be used for street outreach projects. If the client finally gets engaged, updates. Okay, so those are updates. Those are not, they don't have a specific date. It can happen when they need to happen. It could be like a month after the client has been enrolling your program. It could be after 9 months. Anytime that something, a characteristic in the life of your client changes, you conduct a during program enrollment. Now we can go to the annual assessment. Oh man, and we want to talk about annual assessment. Now, if your client stays in your program for 30 days, 90 days, I don't know, 6 months, your only concern here will be 1 and 2. And if there was an update, obviously 3. So if your client is no longer participating, again, we insist you create an exit, right? Because they're no longer participating. If you have clients, however, that stay for more than a year, you have to conduct an annual assessment. And this is where, let me go back to what Kristen was saying before, because she was talking about stayers and she was talking about leavers. You're like, well, Jesus, all the clients that leave are leavers, right? Well, yeah, yes and no. HUD defines a stayer as someone who stays in a project for more than a year. Okay, so if you have clients that have been there for more than a year, those clients, and you see this also in the APR, I mean, stayers. If the client doesn't stay in your program for a year, stays 9 months, 10 months, whether the client is still enrolled or exited, that client will be considered a leaver because he didn't stay there for a year. So for all of the stayers that remain in your program for more than a year, you have to do an annual assessment. And it is very similar to the update. Actually, in our HMIS, you will find them standing face to face in the same place. I'll show you in a minute. They are together, but they're not the same. Okay? They're not the same. And as it says in there, look at your dates. Look at your dates. Always, when you're doing an annual assessment, the first thing you do is look at your dates. What dates? The date of enrollment. Because this assessment, in order to be effective, you have to record it no more than 30 days before or after the anniversary of the client's project entry. And this is regardless of the date of the project, of the most recent update. If you did an update 3 months before the anniversary of the client, you still have to do an annual assessment. Now, one doesn't eliminate the other. Your data is in there. However, when it comes to reporting, only the last one will count. But also, for specific reports, there's the only way that your client progress or information will show in that report is if they have an annual assessment. And again, I'm just talking here about stayers, clients that are there for more than a year. And obviously, I'm talking to you permanent housing projects, because you guys have clients that stay there for more than a year. So you have to make sure that we have annual assessments. How are we doing right now? Do we have any questions? I have one more question. Oh, okay. No, that was not a question. That was just a comment. And it's working. All right, but I do have one more question for you. Maybe you can help me with this. Ready? Let's go and see. This is a scenario that I'm posting here for you. Your client, it's enrolled in May 2014. If this client is still enrolled today, how many annual assessments must he or she have? All right, you have a client that was enrolled in 2014, and if this client is still enrolled today, so how many annual assessments must she or he have in their enrollment? Okay. All right. I think everybody has already voted. I'm going to close this poll. Thank you for your participation. Let's see the results. We have in there 3. Wow. What do you think is the real answer? All right. Just to be on the clear side, let's explain this a little further. Okay. We have a client that was enrolled in May of 2014. Okay. May the 4th with him, right? That's your entry assessment. Then you have May 4, 2015. That's our first annual assessment. You're getting this, right? May 4th, 2016. That's the second annual assessment. And finally, May 4, 2017. That's another annual assessment for this year. So yes, 87% of you that responded 3 is correct. The entry assessment doesn't count as an annual assessment. That's just the entry assessment. I have another scenario for you now that we're here. Let's see. What do you think of this? Your client enrolled in June 2015. If this client is still enrolled right now, how many update assessments must he or she have? How many updates must he or she has? This is okay. I know this is kind of like a trick question. I know it is a trick question, guys. Let's see. Let's share these results. The correct answer is the last one. Yes, as many as needed to fully represent the client's situation. I mean, there's no limit. Like if the client's situation changes, it doesn't matter how many times. You just kind of have an update every time that happens. So that was the correct answer, and I'm glad that we have a bigger percentage of people that actually responded to that. So thank you for your participation. Again, make sure that your annual assessment falls between that 60-day radius of the anniversary of the entry date. Otherwise, it won't count. And you will be mad, and we will be sad, and probably email you to make some changes. Obviously, if you don't get with us before because your numbers don't match. You'll be amazed, but very often, this is all a matter of correcting the dates. One date wrong, and your whole assessment may be funky. So, finally, I want to talk about the master assessment. And this is not an assessment type. No, I mean, I didn't cover it before. So don't look for it. This is not an assessment type. But it is important to know that in order for your data to flow correctly from report to report, everything needs to be tied to that first assessment that you do at program entry. That's your master assessment. Okay? Program entry. So we call it master assessment. Every other update that you do should be tied to that assessment. And we have had cases before where users will call me and yell at me because the information is there, and I truly believe you. I always believe you. The information is there. You enter the information, and the information is there, and you're seeing it. Well, the information is there. The information doesn't lie. However, it happens that if the information is not tied to that master assessment, well, the information is there for decoration purposes, but it's not going to help you in your reports. We're going to make sure that everybody knows how to do that. It bears repeating. Why do we even do assessments? Here's the thing. For HUD-funded programs, and I think in here I have mostly HUD-funded programs today, this is a requirement. Without these assessments, the report simply don't work. Or it works, but it doesn't work accurately. And we're always aiming for accuracy here. For instance, if you have a client enrolled in your project for more than 1 year, and that client doesn't have an annual assessment, that client will not show in a lot of the reports. I mean, you run clients in programs, you may see him there. You run the APR, yeah, you're gonna see it there. The client is enrolled, so he's gonna count. But don't wait for him or his information or her information to count towards AHAR or system performance measures. Now, regardless the responses, if the client situation hasn't changed since the client started in the project, when you do your annual assessment, you still have to do your annual assessment. Even if nothing has changed and the conditions remain, a new annual assessment must be created for each year the client stays enrolled. If that client is gone, simply exit the enrollment. But what if it comes back? Well, guess what? If the client returns, what do? You conduct another intake and you start the process again. If the client's gone, the client's gone. Do we have any questions, or we can go to more scenarios? Okay. This is a good question, actually. Let me read it out loud. I inherit a file with an entry date that is incorrect. All of the annual assessments are based on that incorrect entry date. How to correct this? If I correct the entry date, then all my assessments are no longer within the 60-day window. How best to correct this? This happens often, I know. So if the dates are incorrect, what you have to do is you edit. You don't update. You go and edit. And you start with the entry assessment. I'm gonna show you in a minute when we go to client track how to do this edit. But yeah, you have to go and edit. And you're not gonna edit just one page. You have to edit all of the different dates. For those of you that have been doing assessments, you know that there is not just one date. There's several dates. All of those dates need to match. In order for the program, for the reports to be effective. So you have to go edit your entry enrollment, change all of the dates, and then you do the same with the other annual assessments. You go, you edit, and you change the dates. I'll show you in a minute how to do that. That was a really good question. Luckily, a lot of these issues are easily corrected. It requires some work, but they're easily corrected. So let's go and see some more scenarios. Are you ready? Here's my first scenario for you. A client who was not receiving any benefits on the date of the project entry begins receiving Medicaid during the program stay. What do? What do you do? Let's see. Let's see if you can help me here. What kind of assessment am I going to do here? Here, give you a chance to answer that. Remember that question? Oh, I don't know if you can see the thing again. You have client who was not receiving any benefits on the project entry date and begins receiving Medicaid during the project entry. Okay. I'm going to close this poll now. Let's see. Let's share the results. 87% of you are correct. Why? Why, Jesus? Tell me more. Okay, this is an update. Oh, where? I was already having all of that. Sorry. Yes, this is an update because this is new information. Okay, you are actually, it's important to retain the information about your client status at project entry. If the client was not receiving benefits at project entry, that information should remain as is. The client was not receiving the services. The client started receiving services after, I don't know, a month. So this is new information. You conduct an update. You have to add a new an update for with non-cash benefits with the new date when the client starts receiving this benefit. Again, do not edit the assessment. Do not edit the assessment. You have to create an update. If you click edit the assessment, you are practically writing over your data. And this landmark, this new landmark in the client's life, now that he's receiving Medicaid, that this will become the new starting point. And then you have no progress. The new data is safe, but whatever you had before is gone, disappeared. So no, do not edit the assessment. This calls for an update during program enrollment. And you use obviously the new date when the client started receiving Medicaid, or the date the information was collected, or some other date, as long as the data in the record accurately reflects the non-cash benefits a client was receiving on that date. Thank you for participating. Let's go to another scenario. I have a different scenario here for you. A client enters a project that has required collection points for income information at project entry and update every 90 days. I mean, this happens too. I mean, like, what do you do in this situation like this? Well, obviously, you do your entry assessment when the client starts. And then when the 90, because again, we're talking here about projects that requires you to conduct an update every 90 days. Well, you're going to do exactly that. When the 90 days happen, you conduct an update assessment. This is not an edit again. In 90 days, when the client is in review again, the client has, even if the client has no income, even if there's no change in that client's income, you still have to create that entry, that update, and update the information. Again, this is if your agency requires you to do that. Document whether there are changes or not. Very important. Okay. The same goes for annual assessments. You have to document even if there's no changes. Scenario number 3. This is a good one because this happens also often. A case worker notices that a client's total income was incorrectly entered as 100 when at project entry, when the client's income was actually 1,000. What do we do? What do we do in this situation? Why don't you tell me what do we do? You notice a client's total income was incorrectly entered at project entry. It should be 1,000, not 100. What do? You update immediately to prevent issues later. Wait for the anniversary to do an annual assessment. Delete the client and start over. Or edit the assessment with the correct data. What is your answer? All right, let's close this now and share the results. You are completely right, 93%. You guys know your stuff. Why are we having this training? Yes, you edit the assessment. That is the right call. The appropriate action is to edit the record, to change the 100 to 1,000. This is not new data. This change will accurately reflect the client's income as the project entry date. Obviously, sorry, before I go in, I wanted to add something. This creates a separate metadata element. And this is something that we haven't discussed. I mean, there's a lot of metadata elements that are collected that you probably don't know about them because you really don't interact with them. and we can talk about later those later. But yes, every time you do an update, obviously, or an edit, in this case is an edit, uh, there's a new date that tracks that change, and this is just for audit purposes. But again, you don't have to worry about that because you actually don't interact with metadata elements. All right, so I have one last scenario here before we move to the nitty gritty of this. A client refuses to respond to developmental disability at intake, but later discloses that they were actually diagnosed with developmental disability as a child. What is the correct action in here? What do you do here in this situation? I don't have a poll. I'm going to tell you that you edit, okay? You edit the developmental disability, you change it from client refuse or data not collected to yes. This is because the client was disabled as of entry date. So this data collection is still project entry. We're not here. We're not going to do an update because this is how the client was when the client joined your program. So in this case, this is not new data. You do an annual assessment. Sorry, no, you just edit the assessment. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm seeing here what's next. Questions so far? We're good. Let me see. We're doing good. Awesome. All right. Okay. So I guess we need to go into client track. Again, I'm going to join right now client track. If you have any questions, you can write them in there. I'm going to take a little time because this takes a little effort. Hold on one second. Don't go anywhere. Let me just open my client track real quick. All right. And again, tell me if you can see my screen or if you can't see it. In this case, I hope you can. So I'm going to show you a few things over here. All right. Awesome. You can. Before we move forward with the assessments, I want to show you something really quick, okay? I'm going to click in here for APR. I'm going to go with an APR just because it's easy to use this report. I'm going to run this report and don't worry about anything you see here because I'm connected as Texas Homeless Network. All of this information is fake because we like fake news. We have emergency solutions grant. I'm going to say this for an emergency shelter because I'm running a report on the hypothetic emergency shelter that Texas Homeless Network has. And I'm running this report. I want to run the report just to show you really quick what happens when there's no annual assessments. All right, and the report obviously will take its time. In some cases, it'll be really fast. In some cases, it'll be a little slower, depending on how many data you have in here. For this one, we have 8 clients over there. 7 of them are adults. There's some missing information. There's some clients that refuse to respond or the data they don't know. I'm going to move forward right now to show you in right here. Okay, this is the cash income. We see in here, we have our 7 clients at entry. Then we have here that there's only 5 clients that have a follow-up, and there's 4 that are missing information in there. So this is a good way of knowing. If you have your clients and you run this report and you find that there's information missing, right? There's missing income here. That means that there's no follow-ups. And those are stayers in here. I'm talking about stayers. So that means that some of these clients need to have an assessment. All right, but what's going on here? If you click on the hyperlinks, that hyperlink actually tells you what client is missing. You see there, that's a missing client. If the client responded no, or you type that the client doesn't have any income, well, you see there, no. But then you will see the missing ones. Let's go and see this one. Pollyanna. That's the name of my dog. All right, I'm going to go to clients in here, and I have Pollyanna here. What happens with Pollyanna? Well, I know that she was enrolled in April 23rd. Let's go and see the assessments. So remember the date? April, again, I told you, if the client has been in other programs, you will see more than one entry assessments. So don't be worried about that. You're worried about just the one from your program. And in this case, let's go back because I asked you, check the dates. What were the dates? 4/23/2017. So I go to assessments 4/23/2017. Where is it? There is no assessment. That's bad. There's no information. How this happens? Well, it happens. I'm going to show you how this happens real quick. To do that, I'm actually going to have to erase this enrollment. Again, this happens. And how? Okay, this is one of the things I have to change because you see, we cannot erase information unless I have the appropriate permission to do that. So this is my life, guys. All right, so I'm going to erase that one because it's important for you to know how this even happens, because it has happened, and if you see it in your projects, now you know why. It's not that the system ate the assessment. That's not the answer. This is what happens sometimes. People do intakes. This is this client. Yeah, this is my client. I'm going to do this intake. So I have no changes in this information. I'm going to go to the next page. I have to enroll this client. Is this the client that I'm enrolling? Yes, save and close. Obviously, I know that you guys use a lot more care than I'm doing right now, but I know exactly what I'm doing here. If I click in here, it's going to give me today's date. For this client, I wanted to enroll this client on 4/23/2017, just to have some space in between. So that's my enrollment date, and I click save. So that means that my client right now is enrolled. This is where the assessment starts. And if I close in here, which I can, but I don't recommend you doing that, because then you end up with this situation. You have a client that is enrolled, but you have a client with no entry assessment. So that's bad, because you know now that this client's information will not show in your report. I have another example over here that I wanted to show. Actually, no, that's not my client. I should not use that one to search, by the way. This is not to search clients. This is the right way to search client. Okay, I'm gonna search for my client, and his name is Harmony. Again, this is a fake client. Don't worry about it. Or this one over here. I have this client who is enrolled, again, in my project. And if I go and see the assessments, that's the assessment, okay? That's the entry assessment. He only has one entry assessment. Now, look at the date, 2014. So that means that this client needs to have one assessment for 2015, one annual assessment for 2017, because we're already, what? What is today's date? Yes, today, as of today. And remember, you can do this 30 days before, 30 days after the anniversary. But in order for this client to count, we need to have those assessments. Now, what do you do? Where do you do this? Let's go back to the client. Remember when I was talking about master assessments? All right. This is the enrollment. You find it always here below the enrollment. This is the enrollment. And you might have several if the client has been around or is enrolled in some other programs, but you are only going to worry about the assessment in your agency. All right, so we have in here, you see the first thing that we see is edit the enrollment. You don't want to touch edit unless you have to correct something that it's incorrect. In the cases, for example, that we were talking, if the dates are incorrect at entry, this is where you go. This is where you actually have to go and click edit the enrollment. If that 623 was incorrect, then you have to go and change the dates on all of the forms. All of the forms. When you do this the first time, the first date that you put in here is the dates that you're going to have in the rest of your assessment. But when you're editing, that's not the case. When you edit, you have to actually manually go page by page, making sure that the date is correct. Like, for example, this client, it was not the 6th, Jesus. He was actually no, it was not the 23. It was actually the 13th. So that's my date change, all right? So now I know it's 6/13. And when obviously I don't click no changes. If I click no changes, nothing is saved. So I have to save this and go forward. Again, there's several pages that I need to pay attention. This, the assessment, that's the date. Because before I only changed the date of the enrollment. Now I have to change the dates on the assessment, all right? So nothing else changed except this part over here. So I'm going to make the changes. Again, you make this edit in cases that you need to make a correction for the situation at project entry, not an update. We're not doing updates here, but this date needs to change as well. Save and close. Okay, when you see save and close, if I do save, I'm going to remain in the same page, okay? So in this case, I need to do save and close. You guys know this already. I'm just stating the obvious. I'm going to change this one too, 6/13, save. And finally, this one, 6/13. Again, if this was one of those situations where I had a mistake here, actually, you know what? The client was actually working and he brought me the data after, I can change it here. This is an edit, okay? Again, if that was the case at when the program started, when the client started in the program. But in this case, I'm just changing dates. All right, so that's it. I finished. Why? Because I already know that I have edited the dates. And now you can see in here, if I go and check the assessments, now I know that I have the date over there. Actually, now, wait 1 second. What's going on here, Jesus? Because I changed the date of the, that's the enrollment date, 13, of course. Prove me wrong, Jesus. Let's see. What is the issue? I love when this happens. Yeah, okay, sorry, I forgot to change that one. Save. See? I'm not above mistakes, guys. I make them too. All right, so now, this is 14. So that means that this client needs to have some assessments done in order for this client to be actually counted in my APR. So, again, you have in here both of them. You have the update and the annual assessment. And remember, you do updates if this is not a specific date. You can have as many updates as the client's information change. But if in this case, we're going to do an annual assessment. So I'm going to click on the same place, annual assessment. For this client, it's asking me, for this client that started on this date. And I like to always copy the date just because I have very short memory span. So yes, I'm going to save it for that one. Now this part may be confusing for some because it's like, wait, I'm not doing a new assessment, right? I'm doing an update. No. You're actually doing a new assessment because this is a new annual assessment. So don't let this new assessment throw you off. This is what you want. I'm going to click new assessment and then it asks you, what is it? Is this an update? or this is an annual assessment, and we want annual assessment. So we click annual assessment. Now this is today's date, but remember we changed the dates. So I'm going to put that one in there and then change this for 15. Now when I change that, and again, if anything in here changed in this, I can change, I can make changes, because what now, well, this client now is receiving insurance, and he has Medicaid, let's say, yes, and save that, and we go to the next page. You have the 6th, you see the date is already for this new date. So this hasn't changed. We're still here on the same situation. If this hasn't changed, also you can use the default last assessment, and that will just answer whatever you had last in there. Makes things easier. Now in here, income and other sources. If I click default, this will give me by default, obviously, like what I had. Like, okay, there's nothing, there's some income in there. All right. So let's say that this client actually increased the income. Now he's receiving 1,000 because he got a raise. And we're gonna save that. Great, we have that assessment. If I go back to my assessments, see I have 1 and 2 assessments now, but still, I still need assessments for this year, or actually last year in this case. So I'm gonna do one more. And again, bear with me because this is important. This is another update. Sorry, another annual assessment. Same date for this client. Yes, it's the same client. So I'm gonna save it. This is a new assessment, and this is an annual assessment. But now, this is actually 16. And remember, this is the 13. And here, again, there could be changes that might have affected this outcome. Now, maybe the client lost insurance by then. Okay, hopefully not, but you can do whatever characteristics the client is living now. But guess what? The client is no longer experiencing alcohol abuse. He's already went to I don't know, double A, and his situation changed. Great, we're happy. I'm gonna try to do this as fast as I can here because it's important. Again, I'm gonna default it for last assessment, but guess what? This client actually is no longer doing that. Now the client is receiving 1,200. And not only that, but the client is actually now receiving food stamps. Say that he receives 300 food stamps. All right, save. Great, we have that. Now the client is up to date. You go to the assessments, he has up to date. Like we can have the one for this year in here as well because the date it's still there. But since we have 30 days in between, I mean, we can run it without right now. Now I want to go and show you the report again. I'm gonna say the same. This is 10/01/2016 to now. This is an emergency solutions grant. This is emergency shelter, run the report. We're gonna see here how this is going. All right, and we're gonna go back to that page that we saw before. I should have the other assessment in here, but since I changed my work group, so it erased the other assessment, sadly, but I remember. So you have now less clients missing that information. And if you go here, you can actually see the progress because the client is already counting now. So again, these results we didn't have before. Why? Because the client was not being counted. I mean, he was being counted, let me be honest. He was still here. We still have 8 clients. However, the characteristics of the client's life was not being added to this report. So you had a lot of missing information. But Jesus, we still have 1 client in there that has nothing. What's going on over there? Okay. Well, remember that we had a client with no assessments. Let me go back to this client. This is the mysterious case because this happens. What happens if I have a client and I discover that there's no entry assessment? What happens there? Okay, well, that's very easily corrected. That's not an issue. You can just come here and you're going to edit the enrollment workflow. And again, memorize this date because this is the date that you're going to use for your assessment. That's 4/23. So you go here, no changes. The first page remains. This is the same, no changes there. 4/23, 2017. All right, save. Let's move forward. Again, that's the date. Now it's giving me everything, right? Because this somebody didn't conduct the assessment, so there was no information here. So you go here and make sure that everything accurately describes your client's characteristics. Okay, you might have to go to your files when the situation started. Let's just say that it started on the 20th of 2017. This is just one time. The client has been 2 months, and obviously, let's just say that no, by some reason somebody grab all of these, but that's not going to affect us right now. 4/23, there's no changes in here. I'm going to go forward. No. 4/23, there's some income at entry. I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to say yes. I'm going to have in here 1,000 just to round it up. And we're going to say that the client is receiving TANF. Let's just say, I don't know, like $300. Again, this is all hypotheticals. Oh, sorry. I click in here, that happens, okay? The system is telling me, hey, you wanted to try something in here, but just remove that. Should be okay. All right, finish the workflow. All right, now let's go back to reports. We have this report over here that is showing us some information, but we're gonna run another one. We're gonna run it again. Same information, same clients. New data, hopefully. How are you guys doing? We're almost there. We're almost there, guys. Do you need to select yes for having insurance? No. Okay, if there's no insurance, yeah, I saw an option in there that says no insurance. Yeah, I mean, that's like a, what do you call it? Like a, it's a, it's an issue because it shouldn't be there. I mean, if you already selected no, you don't have to select no insurance below. If you select no, you don't have to select anything at all. It's a redundancy that hopefully with the next update for data standards will be corrected. All right, now let's go and see some data. Where's my other assessment? Over here. All right, I have 2 of them. I don't know if you can see everything in here. I hope you can. Again, no changes here. The clients are still the same. I'm gonna go to that of income. Let's go back. That's page 16. All right. So you see, we have here information missing. We had 3. Now we have 2. Hey, progress. We're getting there, guys. If we move forward, we should be able to see more changes as well. Right, let's see. Now, Jesus, why the client is not showing in there? What's going on? You lied to us. No, I didn't lie to you guys. It's just that some clients, as I said before, some clients are stayers, some clients are leavers. If you pay attention to the date of the client that I just entered, that client actually was entered a few months ago. So that client is still considered a leaver. That's where we will see more of the information in there. And let's see, let's to page 20. So you see that 2 change into a 3. That 2 change into a 3. So that's how you start seeing the changes. If the information is there correctly, your data will be correctly reported into your reports. Now, this is one way of knowing if you need to do annual assessments on your clients. There's many ways to do this, and I actually prefer another one. Actually, I'm the only one that likes it this way because my team doesn't like this one. I'm sorry, guys, if you're hearing this. I know you guys don't like it this one, but yeah, I go here to my client track, current enrollments, and then I look for open enrollments with most recent assessments. What happens here is that once it allows, I mean, like sometimes this page is tricky, okay? And I'm going to tell you this right now. Sometimes you will see an error in here. Why is that? Well, a lot of client track saves pages. Is part of your cache, right? It saves information. So if you change information, this information will not be updated. So you probably will have to remove your cache. And let's see if this gives me the issue here. So I'm going to see in my program, in my emergency shelter program, if there's clients that need assessment. I'm going to put for a year. This means if they need an annual assessment. So if I click here, I know, and I don't know if you remember, but there was 3 clients that were missing information in the APR. Well, now we know which ones they are. Right here. These 3 clients need to be assessed. And again, this is easy because you can just come here. Again, I'm going to tell you where. My client track, current enrollments, open enrollments with most recent assessments, just put there a year. If you have to assess your clients every 90 days, well, just put 90 days there and it will tell you the same. But this pretty much tells you which clients need to be assessed. Let's go back to the APR because there was a part over here. Yes, hold on, one's here. These 3 guys that did have no income at entry or gain income at follow-up or exit. Well, you know where those clients are. These 3. So those are 2 ways that you can do really easy and go and change and make sure that your clients have the necessary assessments so they can truly count in your report. Again, we went through a lot of stuff over here. What happens, for example, if a client doesn't have an exit assessment? I mean, like this client needs to exit. And that happens too, guys. I've seen it. If you click here, exit the enrollment. Let me please close this. This is what I was talking about. That is very, very important. The first page, right here, destination. Where is this client going? It's very important to do. Now, what happens if I just well, if I close this, if I cancel it, I mean, nothing happens. When this happens automatically, when you have a emergency shelter and your client closes automatically, usually there's no assessment done. This will close on the date that it needs to close, and it'll say no exit interview complete. I'm going to say that was the case here just to show you something really quick. I'm going to click save, and that's it. It's done because since there was no interview, it doesn't need to ask me anything else. So you see now, I have in here an exit date. The client was enrolled and exit. All right. If I go to assessments, I notice now that I have, hey, I have an entry assessment. Where is my exit assessment? Well, there was no exit assessment. Nothing was conducted. So again, in your cases, you might find, and I have seen a lot of them when I'm doing AHAR, and also system performance measures, you see clients that have exit dates, but there's no exit assessment. How do I fix this, Jesus? Not a problem, guys. Not a problem. All you have to do is go back and just click again, exit the enrollment. This will launch the application again. And then now in here, you can give me a right answer. Okay, you know what? This client actually went to, where, what can I say? Let's just say that he went and rent a house now because you guys help him so much that he's off the streets for good. She. When I click save, again, this, remember how it didn't ask me questions before because there was no exit interview? Well, now you have to answer here. What's the situation here? Well, yeah, she obtained now insurance, and it's private insurance. The employer now provided insurance for her. Good job, guys. This was all you. And this still there. It's receiving treatment and no changes over there. We're good. But what about the income? Well, this was actually a really good news because now the client is doing, I don't know, and no longer benefits because she's making too much. That's how it is. And that's that. So now, again, we went from having no exit enrollment, assessment, sorry, to now you have your exit over there. And I'm sure that if we go and check those, if we do another APR, we're gonna see some progress over here. Let's see. If you can't find some reports, again, just click on here in the search. I do it all the time. All right, 10/01/2017 till now. No, sorry, 16. Important dates. And again, this is an emergency solutions grant. This is emergency shelter. This is an emergency shelter report. Just run this. Let me see in the meantime if I have questions over here. The destination for children. What is the destination of children if parents are now renting? Is the same as the parents renting. Yeah, the destination for children, unless they do separate things. I mean, sometimes, I mean, they are sadly taken by child protective services, so the clients exit to one destination and the kids might exit to a different destination. If the family goes together, they exit together, they have the same destination, they share the same destination. But again, this can be well, guys, you guys are hearing right now my cat who is looking for a place to vomit. Sorry. All right, so we still have the same 8 over there. Now let's go to income. We have the income the same in there. It's getting better because we're having more situations over here. Let's bring another report so we can actually compare. All right, client track, you always put them like that. All right, so we have one in there and the other one over here. We have to go to page 17 to show the same. What are we seeing here? Well, we see now that that number of increase at project entry is here. It wasn't before. We didn't have it because the client had no exit interview. And these are the little, again, we were talking at the beginning of this presentation about the little things, how a simple report can affect the whole picture. Because now, I mean, if we go forward, like we can actually see that there's some progress going on over here. And this is what we want. We want to show how good our programs are working. And the only way of doing that is to have accurate data. I think I have answered all of the questions. All right, hold on. There's one more in here that I haven't answered. It says, I have noticed that when I re-enter the enrollment, or move a client to a different bed, the system loses the previous information. Sometimes I can go to housing, uh, delete it, and recover the information. Why is that? Okay, it's a good question too. We were talking about emergency shelters and how they have this particularity that after 90 days the client will be exited immediately. And in those cases, for example, if the client has been gone for less than 3 months, you always have the option. I want to go back to the client here dashboard. You always have the option to re-enter. And I know that we have encouraged clients to users to do that because it's easier, but it's not really accurate, because sometimes the clients will break the cycle of homelessness. Let's say that the client move away from your emergency shelter and went to stay with family and friends. Well, that was a change actually in their life. So it's not fair to come, if they come back, to just reopen, and you do it like just by clicking here, re-enter the enrollment, because that pretty much eliminates the previous exit, right? So now you have them back into the system. And again, that's right if the client has been on the streets all this time, because then, yeah, I mean, like technically, like he has been homeless, there's no break in there. But if there's breaks in the homeless situation, I will recommend, do not re-enter the enrollment. Just start over, conduct another intake, and move forward from there. um, yeah, again, we're talking here about keeping accurate records, accurate data. Some information, for example, and this happens with housing programs a lot, because I haven't talked in here. I'm just talking about assessment here. I'm not talking about check-ins. That's a whole different puppy. If you have a shelter and you are entering data into HMIS, you know that there's another step in here that I'm not counting. That's the check-in. When the check-in happens and when you exit an enrollment, you don't necessarily check out the client. You still have to go and do that. So you might have exit a client, close the enrollment over here, but you still have the client open in your shelter. So again, that's an extra step. That's not tied to the assessment. So you might have different dates depending, if you forgot to exit the client in the shelter. You only closed the enrollment, but you didn't actually close the check-in. So those are two different things. And I'm glad that we're touching on those. I hope that I answered the question. Those are two different things. And again, yes, if the client returns, let's say that this was a mistake. Oh crap! You know what? The client actually didn't exit there. You still have that chance of re-enter the enrollment. Once you click that, it says the enrollment has been re-entered, and then it eliminates the exit date. But however, if this was a good exit, I will not recommend doing that, because then I mean, you still have the exit assessment there, so it will still be floating. If there was no interview, if this was an emergency shelter, then by all means, because there's no data. But in this case, we had a good exit here, a good exit that is not going to count for us anymore because we re-enter. Guys, I have taken 2 hours of your time already. I do have some more time in here to conduct some more questions. I think I have covered everything I needed to cover. I'm really, really excited to have had this webinar. I hope that I answered your questions. You know what? I do wanted to share with you some. Hold on, let me see if I can find it, because I do wanted to share with you. Let me find it first, because I know that it's time, and I have to go soon, so I don't want to take too much of your time. But I do want to share with you a survey. If you like this webinar, if you didn't like this webinar, I'm not going to tell you how to vote, obviously, but I'm going to send you here on the chat. I don't know if you can see it. If you go back to the chat portion, you might be able to see customer service survey in there. I do want you to take your time and answer that survey. Obviously, look for me in that list. If you like it, if you didn't like it, if you learned something, if you didn't learn something, please let me know. We're still having next week our normal HMIS webinar. This is just a training, refresher if you want to. I hope it was helpful. I hope you learned a few other tricks. And again, I want to extend our HMIS email. I put in my email in there in case that you have questions. Today, actually, I'm the only one in HMIS. So if you have any questions, you can email them directly to me. But usually, again, if it's an issue, we always suggest you do it through Client Track. But if you want to ask a question, you can always email me or email us, and we'll take it from there. I don't want to take too much of your time. Kind of wanted just to compensate that time that we had at the beginning. But you guys have things to do. It's a Friday after all. The next webinar, that's a good question. The next webinar is next week. And we haven't sent the invitation. We're going to send the invitation, I guess, at the beginning of the week. It's the Thursday. It's Thursday, if I am not mistaken. Check my calendar just to make sure I'm saying the right thing. But yes, it's the 29th. It's the 29th. So be sure to have that information. Yes, the 29th. Thank you. And again, if you like this webinar, let us know. If you didn't like it, if you think that it could have been better, let me know as well, because we're going to have this webinar again soon. And we are looking forward to having more information sessions like this one, like the normal webinar that we have. Maybe we're going to add some more things in there. So thank you very much for joining. And I will see you guys very, very soon. Bye.